this is not the end of your story. As I find myself healing from different traumas that I've experienced throughout my life, a common thread as I think back about the times where I felt like everything was ending and nothing was going to come out of that, right, was that I didn't know that there was another chapter for me to turn to. And I'm now just really sitting with that truth now at this age, right, in my 30s, having been able to reflect back on all those experiences when I felt like my world was ending, because it can really feel like that at the time. So I do want to make space for that. It does feel that way. But to know that there's another chapter in your story, what you're feeling is an end to the chapter, not the book, right? And so if you're new here, thank you so much for being here. My name is Marissa Price. I'm a liberatory healing practitioner helping Black women come into our full authenticity, come home to ourselves, feel safe within our bodies by healing our nervous systems. And so I'd love for you to subscribe. I do have a free 5 step nervous system healing guide that's linked in the description that you can download. But thank you for being here. And yeah, let's get into it, right? This feeling of feeling like everything is ending. It can feel so visceral when you are in these environments, when you're in these times where it just feels like nothing can ever get better, right? No sunlight will ever appear again. And this is it, right? I have been there. I have been there. And so I do want to say that now at this age, again, understanding that this thing that you're feeling is part of life, is part of the human experience, is the end of a chapter, right? And I think I know within the society, we are taught to fear endings. We are taught to fear change, right? Things not appearing or feeling or showing up the same way that we're used to them being. And so I think that's where we begin to feel like the end of a chapter is also the end of the book. But it's not. You have so many chapters left of your book that are filled with a multitude of things, right? Joy, bliss, happiness, um, excitement, right? Things that challenge your thinking, that deepen your intuition. Um, of course, things that are sad, right? That bring up feelings of grief. That's part of the human experience. And there's also joy that exists too. There's also relief that exists. You can also rebuild a sense of self trust, right? So all is not lost if you have found yourself in an environment, and I talk a lot about toxic jobs on my channel. That's how I originally started my channel. Sharing my experience very openly, vulnerably, as I look back now, right, with the internet about what I was experiencing in a toxic job that made me feel like the book was coming to an end, right, of my life. And it is through the power of community, of hearing other people share their story, Black women in particular, share what they were experiencing in the workplace, that I realized that what I was experiencing was not about me. So there's power in externalizing. If you're going through a difficult season, a difficult chapter, to externalize what you are experiencing. There's a lot of things at play that are out of our control. And part of healing, coming into your power, is to identify the things that are within your control. Because I guarantee you, there are, right? Even if they're micro things throughout your day where you can invite joy in, where you can invite breath in, where you can ground yourself, where you can sit in the sun, right? All of these things exist within our power, while also recognizing that a lot of things exist outside of our power. And that's where refraining from internalizing the trauma and mistreatment that you're experiencing is so incredibly important. Because if you do begin to internalize, right, what's actually a toxic environment, it can create this cycle of feeling like this is the end, of anxiety, depression, right? Sometimes even worse within these settings, within these places that we find ourselves in at various points throughout the human experience. And I just want to say right in this video that it's not the end of your book, it's the end of a chapter, and a new one will always appear. This journey of life is winding, right? We're taught and socialized so often that it's fixed, that we should know what to expect at all times. That's just not how any of this works. As I'm learning in my 30s, right? It's really not. You make the best decision that you can at the time with the information that you have. And that's what you do constantly throughout life, right? So as you gain more information, more wisdom, more understanding, of course, you'll be able to make decisions that are better in alignment with who you are, right? Once you begin to have a full understanding of yourself too, and your values, which a lot of us are not exposed to. I know that I wasn't. You start to make those aligned decisions. And also, please give yourself grace for the decisions that you made or the environments that you were in that were not aligned with who you were. Because maybe you didn't know your values. Maybe you didn't have the information that you have now that you can look back with such clarity, right? And be like, of course I shouldn't have been there. Of course, right? I could have walked away. But don't overlook, right? Or underestimate what trauma does to so many of us, right? Tries to convince us that we don't have agency, that there's not another chapter to come. And so we just have to stay in this chapter and, right, power through and prove to other people that we deserve to be here and show, right, and demonstrate our worth to get the validation that we're told to seek. This is a process of socialization, right? And so giving yourself all the grace, compassion, once you start to begin to come to that understanding, right? I could have left. I could have exited. This was just an end of a chapter. And I thought it was the end of a book. All of these things are at play. Again, childhood trauma, trauma that we experience as adults, what society tells us that we're stuck so often. You're having to gain the information to see a different way, which often requires us to be in community with people who are doing things differently, who are showing us the pathways to the lives that we envision, right? And so that's the purpose, right? I just wanted to come on here and share that it's not the end of your book, it's the end of a chapter. And that can also be met with excitement, right? It doesn't always have to be met with this sense of gloom. As someone who is prone to catastrophizing in something I'm healing from, right? It doesn't have to be, this is the thing that feels really scary, frightening. Any transition or change in life can have that feeling because it's new. Something you're embarking on, the new chapter, which you've never experienced before. It's new, so there is going to be a level of uncertainty. And you can also embrace it, right? I would invite you to do that. What would it feel like to embrace the new chapter that will always begin after the old chapter ends, instead of meeting it with such fear, resistance, right? Anxiety? What would it feel like to embrace it? Right? Because if your mind, as I'm healing from catastrophizing, I've had to remind myself, if my mind can do all of these things to generate possibilities of the worst thing to happen, it also has the power to generate the best things that can happen, right? The excitement, the alignment that may be awaiting me in this new chapter. And so, yeah, that's all I wanted to share. I will be facilitating a healing circle this Sunday for Black women and femmes called Finding Calm in Chaos. So please join us if you're interested in that, for a safe place to process, heal, rest, especially if you're in the midst of a transition, right? And I will also link my book in the description as well. I wrote a whole book of affirmations called Cocoon Affirmations for Transformation. If you're in this part of life, right, this phase of life of flipping to another chapter, but it feels like it's the end of your story, know that it's not, right? Life is a constantly evolving, winding story filled with ups and downs. But for every chapter that ends, a new one will begin. And it may be helpful to just sit with that when you experience kind of the fear around um, change to come. So thank you so much for watching. Again, please subscribe to my channel if you're interested in healing content, processing trauma that we have experienced to become our full authentic selves, um, and regulating our nervous systems, right, and the ways that our bodies operate. Please subscribe and join us. My name is Marissa Price. I'm a healing practitioner, and thank you so much for watching.